and this is the BR Ranking Show presented by UKG. I am joined by my No Punts Allowed podcast co-host and national college football writer for Bleacher Report, Adam Kramer. Week 8 is complete. 9 top 25 teams lost. And for the second week in a row, we have a big program fire their head coach. As we were about to go live for this show, it was reported that Billy Napier is out at Florida. So, Adam, what did we learn this weekend?
Well, a lot of teams are still probably going to be looking for a head coach. Yeah, I mean it's a lot. Look, this was a wild weekend. It was a slate of games that was always going to produce movement in the rankings. I guess we have to start with Billy Napier. The question is this the last firing of this show, right? I feel like you and I are
No.
magnets to this. Auburn fans, Florida State fans, Wisconsin fans. I mean, this is really. I think the business of college football is really intensifying this time of year. So while we're talking about the AP poll, we've got the college football playoff rankings on the horizon. You've got teams that are nowhere near that, and as such are taking action. So the Florida stuff, obviously huge news, and going to be a lot to unpack.
Yeah, and we will continue to monitor if there is any more breaking news on coach firings. We will also bring you the AP poll as soon as it drops. But Kramer, let's start with the poll itself and the movement that is going to happen. I mentioned 9 top 25 teams lost. We saw Miami lose early in the week on Friday. Not much of a shocker, I would say, to those who have been paying attention to Louisville. But let's start with that to begin with. What do you think about Miami's loss?
I think when you look at last week, Carson Beck was the Heisman favorite. Miami was the number 2 team, right? And we actually we didn't agree with that. It doesn't matter now. I think not only, what does it mean for Miami? What does it mean for the ACC? We'll talk about that, I think, throughout this show. But it was pretty shocking. Like when you consider double-digit favorite, this is Miami's chance. And Paige, I can't help but think about last year, number
Yeah.
1 pick playing, very similar outcome. I've been pretty critical of Mario Cristobal. Granted, he didn't throw those interceptions,
Yeah, I was just going to say.
but I there's a pattern here that Miami seems to revisit. Or unfortunately, season's not over just yet for them. There's still plenty to play for, but you can't quantify that, especially at home, as anything else but a hugely disappointing outcome.
Yeah, and I will say this. So I mentioned it wasn't shocking because to me, I looked back at Louisville's record, who they had played, what they had done, and I was kind of shocked they hadn't been ranked at all this season. They've definitely been on the receiving end of some votes. They will certainly be in the
They'll be
top
there.
25 when it drops here in a few minutes. Um, but not as surprising as I would have thought. To your point, Miami seems to find a way to lose a game
Yes.
that really cost them the opportunity to be in the playoff. Last year it was their defense. This year, I would say this was not fully on their defense. And I think it'll be interesting to see how they sort of regroup and go forward. And like you mentioned, the ACC will certainly be an interesting conference to pay attention to when it comes to college football playoff, which by the way, those rankings are 2 weeks away.
Crazy.
Adam, I am seeing a new rankings that has dropped, so those will be up soon.
Ooh.
But another team I do want to talk about that did get a pretty big win is Alabama.
So,
Very big win, got to light up those cigars. Thoughts about how they played against a really tough Tennessee team?
remember when Kalen DeBoer, we were doing this
It was
conversation, right? We did that with first week. Lost to Florida State, which, by the way, it's not a very good loss. It's getting worse and worse as we go. But the way they recovered, 4 ranked wins in a row. I like the way the defense is playing, Paige. Obviously, that game flipped by a defensive touchdown, 99-yard interception return. What does that game look like if that play doesn't happen? Well, we don't know. Alabama's making plays. Ty Simpson is your Heisman favorite. You've got amazing weapons to work with. You have a coach that now looks comfortable and confident. Still a long way to go for Alabama, but in terms of resume, as you talk about 2 weeks away for the college football playoff ranking, their resume looks really, really good, right?
yes.
Things are calm now. You can feel it in and around that program, which I like, and the results speak for themselves.
Yes. So just to note, this is the AP poll rankings. These are not our personal rankings.
Thank you.
So saving us from the chat to start. These are the new AP poll rankings for this week. And you see in the graphic
Wow.
there, does the Tide have a case for the best team in the country? They obviously got 4 straight wins versus ranked opponents. I mean, I would argue that they look great. Again, I do want to mention Black Hoodie DeBoer. That is still a thing. Every time he's worn their black hoodie, they have won this year, and last year also had a great record in it. So going to continue to bet them, just so you know. But these are the AP poll rankings. Let's talk through another big win. You see Vanderbilt moving up big time. Thoughts on this Vandy team and their toughness? I know we wrote on Diego Pavia yesterday after that game, but I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, up 7 spots. Wow, what a rise. Yeah, so look, they are going to be, featured game next week, which speaks to the kind of year that they've had. I think the coolest thing about Vanderbilt is this was a really good story last year. They beat Alabama. They have this quarterback that started off playing in Roswell, New Mexico, who nobody knows. He's been playing now, it feels like, for 15 years. Doesn't matter. Diego is that dude, right? He makes things happen. He's got the attitude, and they're legit. They are more obviously than just their quarterback. The defense has played great. But I think the biggest compliment I can give them is they are making beating teams like LSU look normal, right? Like that's not a shocking
Yeah.
outcome anymore. That's how far Vandy has come. And the fact that, we're talking about a potential playoff game of like Vandy versus Indiana, right? Like that's where we are. So I love the rise of this team. But it doesn't get any easier. They've got a massive game coming up, and they've got obviously a lot of teeth on that schedule down the stretch. But for this week, enjoy it. There was a lot of carnage that happened in front of them, and you can see by the rank they take full advantage.
Yes, Vandy beats LSU for the first time since 1990. They're off to a 6-1 start for the first time since 1950.
Crazy.
That is crazy. Some of these stats coming out about some of these teams who are playing really well this season are amazing, and we certainly love to see it. Let's talk about Ole Miss because you go to Georgia, you get a tough loss, really let them come back in that game. You had it in control. Thoughts on Ole Miss and how they sort of move forward from that?
You know, they only dropped 3 spots, right? So
Yes.
I think the most disappointing thing, like all hope is not lost, but Ole Miss the last couple of years, and I don't want to say they threw this game away because it's playing at Georgia, but given the way that game was going, doesn't it feel like not just a potential win, but you lost a mulligan, right? And this is what has hurt Ole Miss is
Yes.
finding ways, stumbling ways to lose. I thought they did so much good in that game. Neither defense played well. Um, I thought Lane Kiffin, you could see at the half when they entered with the lead, like this is a game that you have to have. So it's really interesting with all the coaching search and all the changes going on, by the way, that we're having this is Lane at Ole Miss because he's going to be a very popular name regardless of his current tenure, right? For his future as they're
Yes.
trying to get an extension done. But
Yes.
so, okay, you only dropped 3 spots, fine. Still, hugely disappointing outcome. This is a game that Ole Miss has to win. They have to break through at some point. Unfortunately, they did not do that yesterday.
Yes. I do want to give Gunnar Stockton credit. He had his best game so far, 289 pass yards, 4 touchdowns. And I think a lot of people have questioned maybe big game ability. We've seen him do it against some pretty good teams in terms of Tennessee and now Ole Miss, kind of a big win for Georgia when their defense really did struggle on that front. So interested to see how this Georgia team sort of moves forward. And you could tell Kirby wanted that one. I
Yes.
think sometimes because he's won back to back and we've seen Georgia have these dominant teams that just continue to be so good. He knows that this team is going through a bit of a grind and they're getting these wins. Yeah, I that was a really cool thing to see him really celebrate some of the wins they've had over the last couple of
I,
weeks in a big way where I feel like he doesn't normally do that.
No, and they got kind of back to Georgia football. They using tight ends, right? And it was more of that brand. They still really can't rush the passer all that well. I mean, the defense, when you consider where it was 2, 3 years ago to what we saw yesterday, I mean, there was not a stop to be found. I'm glad you brought up Gunnar Stockton. I really like watching him play. He is not like the best athlete that they've had, but he keeps them in games. The way he uses his legs, the way they use him, you could see him evolving, and he plays with no fear. Like they need that. So this is a more like mortal Georgia team than we've seen, which makes it kind of fun. But they've had some huge games, and they've played in close games, and obviously done very, very well.
All right, Adam. Someone in the chat saying the SEC is overrated. We love to see that, but let's talk about Texas A&M, who is the only undefeated team in the SEC. Now, Adam, I know you have been pretty high on this team. You do love Marcel Reed. I gotta tell you, giving up 527 yards of total offense
It is.
is alarming to me. And that's, you know what, also credit to Taylor Green. I do want to give him the credit, the Arkansas quarterback. But that has to be something where, sure, you're undefeated and you got those wins. I feel like Texas A&M has played in a lot of close games. Is that concerning for you for Texas A&M?
Oh, hugely, hugely. Yeah. Now, it's interesting because Texas A&M has won in a few different ways.
Yeah.
41-40 over Notre Dame. We were on Arkansas yesterday, by the way. So that last touchdown that brought it within the spread was good for business. 16-10 Auburn. They've played defensively well. You know by their head coach that they're going to want to play defense. But here's the concerning part, right? At LSU, we'll talk about them. It's a team that's in some turmoil, and at Missouri the next couple of weeks, right? Next couple of games. And that is a problem. So the defense, I think, is definitely worrisome. Reed has obviously played exceptionally well, has asserted himself into the Heisman discussion, but I don't think even A&M fans would say like this is a perfect team, all is well. They've played in close games, they've done what they need to done, but there are holes on this team right now that have to be addressed. The only great part is they have a head coach you would think as the season progresses is going to find a way to fill those in. And to your point, Arkansas, under Bobby Petrino, with the quarterback that they have, has been tough. Like they've played really, really well. So you hope that maybe this is an Arkansas success story, or at least progress, and not an A&M issue. But I think both are kind of true.
Yes. Um, let's talk about Oregon. So obviously you lose to Indiana, frustration. We even saw frustration from Dan Lanning in his press conferences this week, answering some questions about that once they moved on to Rutgers. Started their game with a turnover, but figured it out and kind of played the kind of game they wanted to play in a big win. But any thoughts on Oregon and maybe how they continue to move forward from that loss and just keep focused?
750 yards of offense. 750. That, and it could have been more. So yes, I know it's Rutgers, but you had to go cross country, right? Like it's still a trip. 750 yards. I think they're going to be okay. Does this tell us a ton about how they're going to fare when the competition raises? No, but it does get things back on the tracks. It gets some momentum back in the sails. I think this team is going to be fine. And look, again, this is a week where you just don't want to lose, right? You mentioned 9 teams. So think of how the different the rankings look now. For
Yeah.
Oregon, like take care of business, but like the way they took care of business certainly provides a little hope for the future.
Absolutely. Another team that sort of had a bounce back week is Oklahoma. I feel like they're about to face, by the way, the biggest buzzsaw there ever was
Yeah.
in terms of a schedule. So very frustrating. But we'll say I was happy to see Mateer seem to do his thing. Their defense sort of got back on track, got to Lenora Sellers. Big win for Oklahoma. Do you think that maybe the Texas game was a bit of a, okay, we're just trying to get things back, or do you think this Oklahoma team might continue to struggle a bit against what they have coming up?
So I love the way this defense is playing. Number two ranked defense in the country behind only Ohio State. And if you watch them week to week, they are no fluke. Now, let's be honest, South Carolina's a mess. They've been a mess. If you watch this game, credit to Oklahoma's defense. I didn't think the Oklahoma offense was spectacular. I don't know if they had to be. This spread was only what, 4 or 5.5 points. So this was expected to be a tight game. Is this boa constrictor type of football going to work in the future? To your point with the gauntlet coming up, and what is the state of their quarterback who came back so quickly from surgery? Right, like it would be unreasonable to expect him to be Superman
Yeah.
from the start. So I have some concerns just offensively because they haven't been spectacular, but there's no doubting this defense page. So it's gonna keep them in every game. This is like Auburn. Sorry, Auburn fans. It's like Auburn, but with a competent quarterback. And like this is what it looks like when you could score just enough points and not shoot yourself in the foot. For the most part, outside of Texas, they've done just that. But yeah, it's there's a long road to go for Oklahoma, and it starts here this coming week.
Notre Dame getting a big rivalry win against USC. And speaking of coaches who potentially could be worried about things going on, Lincoln Riley might be in this conversation soon after that loss. But an impressive showing by their duo of running backs, a
Oh my
career
goodness.
night for Jeremiah Love. But also their defense. They weren't great, but I think we've seen them gradually get better. Obviously, we know the big struggles to start the year. Definitely Not something that was super expected, but their secondary came up in big spots. Maybe not the perfect, but they shut down USC's run game completely. So I mean, props to them for continuing this. Also, the reaction of Marcus Freeman after that game. I think this was their last like super big test to kind of keep that resume clean for the playoff. And I feel like that
You could see
his
it. Yeah,
excitement after that also was part of that.
totally. Jeremiah Love's a star. If there's a year for a running back to potentially win the Heisman again, with all the movement we had, maybe this is the one, right? The whole running game is
Wow.
good. Oh yeah, I mean he's spectacular. CJ Carr was not, but I think he's going to be fine. This is a weird football game, really, really weird,
Disgusting
strange,
football game.
strange coaching decisions. Lincoln Riley apologizing afterwards. USC fans are defending him, but mad at him. I don't know. Clay Helton had a better record through 47 games. I'm just saying. As
Had to get
for
that in there.
as I do, as for Notre Dame, here's what they have left. To your point, Boston College, Navy, undefeated, thought they might be
Yes.
ranked. Pitt, Syracuse, and Stanford. So could you drop one of those? Sure. Pitt at Pitt always plays a weird football game. Boston College, maybe Navy, who knows? But the all likelihood they're going to finish the season exactly as they are. I don't know if people are going to like this because doesn't this mean they're in the college football playoff? I know we're talking about 8 people. Let's pivot for a second. Aren't they in the playoff then if that happens?
Um, I mean,
No
Notre Dame is
comment.
definitely if they win out, they are certainly they're in.
Okay.
It's unfortunate, but they're if they win out, they're in.
It's unfortunate. Thank you for the added color to
Well, it's
that.
unfortunate because this team is not that good. Like there are a lot of teams that are going to play in conference championships. Okay, actually, let's talk about this really quickly because
I'm in.
I'm thinking specifically about the ACC. And like, here's a situation where, sure, Notre Dame, of course, lost to very good teams that are ranked, sure. But say you have in the ACC championship game now, you would maybe get like what, Georgia Tech
Who knows?
and
SMU, Miami, Louisville. I
well,
mean,
SMU, yes. But I think
not
the other
Clemson.
part of this is like Virginia is the team that beat Louisville. So that's Louisville's one loss by 3 points. So the head to head would give Louisville that. So say Georgia Tech and Louisville play in the ACC championship game and Georgia Tech beats Louisville, but then you have Miami sitting there with maybe not losing any more games, but they didn't play in their conference championship game. And then you have Notre Dame who doesn't do
Uh,
that either.
You know,
Who do you put in? Like that becomes a conversation of like, and look, I'm saying this now. The ACC, we always want them to play chaos, and they just never do.
I,
Someone's going to lose a game they're not supposed to in this last stretch, and it's not going to be it. But whew,
here's what I'll say. When it's the season is done, of the teams remaining, the team that's has the best chance to be ranked is probably Navy. Although Notre Dame is going to beat Navy, and there that goes, right? But their Navy is one of the few unbeaten's left. The best win, at least when this is all said and done, in terms of how you it might be Boise State, depending on what USC does, right? Like this is a
yeah,
really weird year. It's gonna make people mad. People are gonna have very strong opinions of this. This is why I asked because it's such a
well,
polarizing
yeah.
resume, and and
Someone
again, it's not gonna get any better.
someone in the chat said that the ACC should only get one team in, and it's true. Like there's things where you could look at resumes and go through this, and say, yeah, they should only get one team in. The Big 12 obviously going to be very interesting. Let's talk a little bit about Texas Tech,
Yeah.
because when you don't have your starting quarterback, tough loss. They did drop 7, which is something that I sure like yeah, if you're hurt and you lose to a team that again wasn't really getting the respect that they deserved because they've had some injuries, they've struggled a bit in terms of ASU. Also disappointing that Texas Tech's defense couldn't do it for it. Let's just
Yeah.
say Will Hammond handled what he needed to handle to get them ahead in that game for them to win, but tough when you have your starting quarterback out. And I think so. This is obviously AP poll voting, but when we get to college football playoff, in terms of like how much wiggle room does Texas Tech have? Because if they have a second loss, I don't know that they're going to be in a situation where they will be able to make the college football playoffs. Because again, I don't know that the Big 12 is a 2 bid conference. And that's unfortunate that it comes with an injured quarterback, which, at Florida State fans are like, you know what? That's the
That's
worst
the
of
way it
their worries.
goes. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're banged up on the defensive line as well. But but no excuses. They could have won that game. To your point, they should have still won
Yes.
that game. This is a team that has looked the part of a college football playoff participant. And now, when you look at the way BYU plays, and I want to talk about that in a bit. But yes, the Big 12 at this point, any loss, you worry about what that's going to mean to your resume because this is not the SEC, it's not the Big Ten. You need to stack up those wins and, more importantly, avoid the blemishes. So, will the committee factor that into the college football playoff rankings? Of course, right? That
Yeah.
will happen. Um, Although Hammond, who's played well when he's been asked to, I thought played an okay game again. It's a tough environment, tough team. There's some depth, there's some teeth to the Big 12. Shout out to Arizona State, by the way. You've got your best wide receiver limping around. You've got Levitt, who's an absolute dog. You've got a great coach. I mean, that team is a problem still. So disappointing for Texas Tech. Arizona State back in the rankings and deservingly so.
All right, well, now it is time for our new segment, When Work Works, presented by UKG. Go to ukg.com for HR, pay, and workforce management. And Kramer, when it works, you rise up the rankings. And so we are going to talk about our biggest risers. And you're going to take the number 11 team BYU, who moved up 4 spots this week.
I am thrilled for BYU. They are surging up the rankings. They have lost what, two out of their last 20 games only, 18-2, and the two losses combined by less than 10 points. Freshman quarterback Bear Bachmeier, who you and I were talking pre-show. We this is a guy that can play, right? Can do it with the arm and his legs. By the way, I love that jersey look too. They just look the part. They should be ranked higher. I don't know why we do this with BYU. They should be
Okay.
ranked higher. They're up 4 spots, so I'm happy, but I'm actually going to use my time to rant a little bit. Like, what else do you want to see from them? I think BYU should be up at least a few places, but I'm happy for them. And this program over the last 2 years, Paige, is just they're a beast. So as long as they continue to play and win, they're going to be right there for the college football playoff.
Absolutely. And I think the note about Bear Bachmeier is that he also showed up there in June. So, like, the
Yeah,
fact that
good
he's doing
point.
this, I mean, we did a preview prediction of this, and both of us were like, hey, it's a bit of a concern that he's young. This is a tough game, a rivalry game. Of course, they were at home, but still a very tough environment to play. And he handled business. I will say he very much handled business. I also didn't realize how good of a defense BYU had. I think because
Yep.
the focus was so much of, oh gosh, is their offense going to be okay when they had like a late transfer, all of those things. And they really are in control of their own destiny at this point. I thought that was a really big win. And to your point, I also think they should be ranked a little higher. But my biggest riser, I want to talk about Georgia Tech, who, by the way, is 7-0 for the first time since 1960. Haynes King just always putting the team on his back and getting wins. A huge factor in the ACC, of course, Miami losing makes this more feasible and them moving up. But I love this Georgia Tech team. I think a lot, and Kramer, I'm not trying to call you out personally here, but I think a lot of people have talked about the way they play the game and how tough it is and how physical it is. And I don't know, I think they're just built different. Like, they are very much built different. And I really love this team. I love their coach talking about what he learned from Coach Saban and sort of keeping up every week and not really taking your opponents for granted, and keep fighting because really, like, you're never going to be comfortable. So keep going. But yes, they are amongst one of the last undefeated teams
I
in the
feel like you
country, which is
are
huge.
calling me out personally,
Yeah,
and
sorry. Yeah.
they were an underdog yesterday.
They were. How disrespectful.
Not only were they an underdog, but Duke was one of the most bet teams in all of college football. Georgia Tech,
Not by me.
not that I had Duke or anything, not bitter at all. 99-yard fumble return, right? So you talk about these 99-yard swing plays impacting teams ranked in the top 10, Alabama and Georgia Tech, and Duke just could never recover from that. By God, Duke does some incredibly bad football things all the time. Turnovers, you name it. But Georgia Tech is game. You know what you're getting into with them. And to the point about the ACC, we at least probably have to give them a little bit more respect than they're getting. I think there's an
Thank
assumption that they're going to
you.
lose at some point. You look at the way they came back against Wake Forest. They can only play who they're going to play. And they have a quarterback, obviously, that's going to keep them in every game.
Yes. Dark Horse Heisman, just throwing that out
Oh
there.
boy, here we go.
That's for our pod listeners who know the what bet we have going there. All right. Biggest fallers. Number 20 LSU falls 10 spots after losing to Vanderbilt. Now, I'm going to just give you the floor on LSU and let me know what you think the vibes are like for that fan base and also that locker room.
So the defense has gotten better, and the assignment yesterday was tough in going up against a quarterback like Diego, who could beat you in so many ways. I am shocked that the offense is not better than it is, right? When you look at Nussmeier coming back, where he was
Yep.
amongst preseason Heisman hopefuls, all the money spent on NIL and through the transfer portal, the early returns, the early signs that we saw against, Clemson, which frankly, like that game lied maybe in the biggest way. And at what point do we start to look at Brian Kelly and say this is not working? It was an odd fit to start, obviously, with when you talk about just his arrival, and it's not working. It's really not. This is LSU as a team you could argue is one of, if not the best job in all of college football, and it does not feel like there is a fix in sight. Right. So I know we're talking about Florida, we're talking about Florida State, Auburn. We got other coaches on the hot seat to talk about. Brian Kelly's going to keep his job. I don't think he's going to be fired this year, but this is a hugely disappointing season. All that being said, I think they're going to win a football game next week. And that's what life in the SEC is. Still, if you're an LSU fan, you have every right to be mad because this looked like a year where you're going to turn the corner and you lose to Vandy, which you gave the stats. You don't do it. This is like a once a century thing. And it just happened again. And we're expecting it. That speaks to where LSU is as a football program.
Let's talk about Texas. They are not
No.
amongst the biggest fallers, but I would say in terms of they could have been amongst the biggest fallers in their season. Why are they still in
Why,
the
why
top
are they
25?
ranked?
What are we doing?
Why are they ranked? This team is
I don't know.
bad. This team is bad.
You,
The defense is great. This team is bad. This
yes.
is an embarrassment. This is an embarrassing thing to do. As an AP poll voter, what are you doing and seeing with Texas? Like what are we doing here?
Why are we not? I'm so sorry. So the teams that other teams that have received votes, USC obviously falling out. Utah, Tulane, and Houston, and Navy. If I'm a fan of any of those last few that I just mentioned, I'm furious
Are
that
Texas
Texas is
fans
being.
happy about this, or are they just like leave us
Yeah, no,
alone?
they're like,
Like
please.
like this is what about that game, right? So to your point, they did not no, they went down one. So that is the outcome of that. I mean, Kentucky, frankly, was a yard away from this conversation not happening. Kentucky, who's also potentially going to fire their coach. So the relief on Arch's face said it all when this game was over. Just thank God. Let's get out of here, please.
Yeah, just
I
please.
this it's just not working. The offense isn't working. Sarkisian body language, I think yesterday was more pronounced than it's been. We're not going to rag on Arch like we've done this already. It's just this is not working. The defense is this is a championship level defense that unfortunately I think is going to be wasted this year. And you have to question, I think, now the trajectory of where they're going to go because offensively, yes, the Arch conversation is going to consist through the rest of this year. At some point, you're going to have to make a change at QB, right? You and I have talked about this,
I
like
at nauseum. I have talked about this at nauseum about when you should bench Arch, and I have said I think it should have come sooner, but I know that Sark is not going to do it until they're out of the playoff.
it's
I
that
think that is to
moment.
save face. Yes, it's when they lose that game that they're out of the playoff conversation. It's going to come. They're going to lose a game, and then they'll be out of the playoff conversation, and then it'll be like, okay, we make the change because we lost that, and then that's something that they could save face with Arch. I know the portal conversation, the what happens next conversation, the next it begins. You begin to think about next season, and Sark can't justify losing these games and not do anything. Although I again hesitant to have this conversation because again we were talking about this with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning last year and whether or not he should have done that. And Sark knows best, but at the same
He
time
knew.
he's accountable for that. So
He knew.
it's one of those things. Also, a team that we just really have not talked about because they just seemingly win every game. Second time that they shut out a team, Ohio State. By the way, the number one team in the country. I saw in the chat. I do want to talk about this. Someone said that Alabama would beat Ohio State right now. I'm curious your thoughts on that comment.
Well, I think it's fair to question Ohio's. I mean, it's not fair to question their placement at number one. And I do want to talk about Julian saying Alabama is
Yes.
pretty seasoned though, and Ohio State really hasn't had that. You beat Texas at home, albeit with a young quarterback getting his first start. If they were to play now, I think Ohio State would beat them by double digits, comfortably. Alabama has been through the gauntlet already, so I don't necessarily think that's a bad take. I'd actually love to see it. We may see it, right? For Ohio State, though, Julian Saint is getting very comfortable. And that receiving course more than Jeremiah Smith, they are dynamic. That is an offense and a quarterback that I think is really, really going to be good. I had to take earlier this year, Paige, that Julian Saint is going to win a Heisman while he's at Columbus. I didn't necessarily expect it to be this year. I think he's got a chance now. So it is weird that we do this show every week, and we probably have spent less than 1% of our time talking about the number one team in the country. I think for good reason, because they are going about their business. And frankly, it may not be all that interesting with them until we get to the playoff, right? I mean, that's the kind of team they are. This defense, when you think about Jim Knowles going to Penn State, all the pieces that they lost, I mean, that is also the compelling story with them. They got a quarterback and they replaced so many pieces on that side of the ball. I also want to get your point about Indiana. We thought they should be number two last week. Miami gets out of the way, so here they are at number
Yes.
two. They give their coach a big, what, 90 plus $1 million contract. I guess it's just a good week to be an Indiana fan, more or less.
I mean, you and I talked on our podcast about because before that extension happened, obviously his name was dropped in the Penn State conversation, and I just said simply, I don't want him to leave Indiana because I want it to just be proven that the new era of college football, you can win and make a program dominant that is not necessarily a blue blood in football, basketball, yes. And very excited about this team. Again, there's not much in their future that I'm worried is going to trip them up based on how they played. And of course, love Fernando Mendoza getting the credit he deserves and really developing in a system that is known for creating monsters of quarterbacks. Another team that the chat really wants to talk about that I personally love that we're going to talk about is Houston.
Yeah.
Um, Heartbreaking loss for me over the weekend because Houston beat my Arizona Wildcats. However, they do play Arizona State next week, and everyone is asking, is Houston going to be ranked if they get that win? Absolutely, they should be
Yes.
ranked. I
Totally.
think they should have been ranked this week, guys. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's
I
my
had them.
take.
I had them ranked too. 34 votes received, so they were what, fourth off the list behind USC, Utah, Tulane. Not enough credit being given to the job being done there. Of
Mhm.
course, going out and get Wegman, the quarterback, and just rebuilding that roster. This is a team that flirted with major success, like national success, not terribly long ago. So it's great to see them completely rebuild. Obviously, Tulane as well. I know not, it does bring apart when you look at some of these teams and the others receiving votes about that race for that group of
Group
five
of five.
spot, right? Yeah. So
Darn, we
South
didn't even
Florida,
talk about
we we,
Memphis
we could,
losing.
oh my goodness. Yeah. Memphis, you fire Trent Dilfer and you start winning games against ranked teams. Oh my God.
UND, I guess,
Yeah.
who lost their starting quarterback, we should mention. But that's still definitely opens the door for South Florida. They do. Speaking of that, let's talk about some games that we have coming up um, this week. Kramer, where do you want to start in terms of big games that we have coming up?
So it's a little bit different, but we know that College Game Day is going to Nashville for Missouri and Vanderbilt. And I think this, if you want to give the SEC a little bit of love. I know we had people saying the SEC is overrated. I would at least give this game as evidence that maybe that is not the case. The fact that Missouri at Vanderbilt is the most compelling game of the week, which I think it is. And it's a hugely important game for both teams. Missouri, uh, again, Auburn knows how to lose football games like no one else. But Missouri found a way to win that game. My quarterback, Bo, found a way to win that game despite some issues early on. It sets up a fascinating matchup between two quarterbacks that are going to move the ball around a bit. So, Paige, I think to me, again, Vandy has a chance to really keep this thing going. And the
Yes.
winner of that game is very much going to enter that college football playoff conversation. The loser, unfortunately, very much on the back burner.
Yes, because unlike the ACC and Big 12, we do know that the SEC is going to get quite a few teams in. But I will say Missouri owes us a really good football game because of what they made us watch versus Auburn.
Oh,
We
it's
have
awful.
Ole Miss at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Curious how you think, I mean, two back-to-back road games. We saw sort of it kind of crumble in front of Ole Miss. I'm I'm hesitant to think that they'll be able to recover. However, if I have a slight lean here, it's Ole Miss for this game.
Oklahoma is a 4-point favorite early on in this game,
Interesting.
which is a very interesting line. And I'm with you because my early lead would be Ole Miss, but Oklahoma is getting some love. So Oklahoma has issues offensively, obviously, but if you're going to have issues offensively, Ole Miss defense isn't exactly putting up a huge fight. You can watch the Georgia tape, feel pretty good. So, again, another massive game. You mentioned the Oklahoma Gauntlet, Ole Miss Gauntlet, whatever you want to say. Feels like another potential elimination game in the SEC. If you look at this board, by the way, it is very SEC heavy, right?
Yeah.
Like it is. And the other line that jumped out to me, Paige, while we're talking about him, Texas A&M is only a 2.5 point favorite at LSU. It's a really interesting point spread that, LSU obviously a really tough place to play. A&M has been playing with fire in terms of these really close games. So while we can rip on the job Brian Kelly has done and what he hasn't done, the odds makers still like LSU quite a bit this week, clearly. So that's one to look out for.
Absolutely. And then, of course, BYU plays at Iowa State, again, trying to keep their record sparkly clean for the College Football Playoff Committee. But Iowa State, any possibility of an upset?
Iowa State's favored -2.5 to
See, this
start.
is wild.
I know. Yeah. So you got
College
some.
football is fun.
It is fun. I think this is the Big 12 in a nutshell. It's a really tough place to play. BYU with a rivalry win this week, kind of a close game. Now you got to go on the road and play in an environment that has produced its fair share of upsets in the past. Although, at least as of now, this would be an upset. Iowa State, which has had its own really unique season, starting in Ireland, coming back home, a chance to really throw a wrench in the Big 12 when you look at the results and the conference rankings.
Yeah, Kramer. So I do want to mention today something is happening that has not happened before in the college football playoff era. And that is the committee is getting together today to discuss what they have seen. So nothing is really like happening or being ranked, but they are getting together today to discuss what they have seen so far. So in terms of results for this week, it was a big week to have maybe a disappointing loss like for Miami or, have the discussion around Texas Tech or the hype that's going to be around Notre Dame in that win. There are a lot of factors, and the discussion is starting a little bit early. We're about 2 weeks away from getting those rankings. So I am very much looking forward to it. Any other games that you can see on here? I think South Florida and Memphis is a big one. We just mentioned that Memphis did lose. South Florida trying to, stay in it. If they end up winning that game, it's kind of a clear path to the college football playoff. If they lose that, definitely opens the door for Tulane, so something to keep an eye on. But any other games this week that you're like, you know what, this could have potential to ruin that path before those rankings?
Cincinnati is unbeaten in the Big 12, right? It's a team that we haven't really talked about. They play Baylor, uh, a team of chaos, a team that can score. That's one for me that I want to keep an eye on. Michigan State. You're starting to see a little bit of pressure on the Michigan State front, obviously with Jonathan Smith, and obviously Michigan getting back on track. Another team that in the rankings this week, so you wonder what happens there. It is, you don't have a ton of these, top 10 matchups, but what you do have is some depth. And you have some really
Yep.
close games and some really close point spreads, as we saw already. So it should be a really compelling week.
Yes. By the way, the chat actually on LSU thinking they're going to beat Texas
I'm with
A&M
the chat
this
on
week.
this.
You know what?
I am.
I kind of feel the same, but of course we always love doing this show and hanging out with you guys. That is all we have. This has been your Top 25 Weekly Ranking Show presented by UKG, and we will talk to you all next week.